What's up, fam? It is B back for another episode of Be Unleashed, and welcome to all of you who have joined and are tuning in currently to this video. I'm so excited to have you here for episode 16 of Be Unleashed, which is crazy to me. And it has been an amazing experience thus far. So I am super appreciative of all of you who have already subscribed to my channel. And for those of you who have not, please feel free to click the subscribe button underneath this video and make sure you click the bell as well, because that will allow you to be notified of all of my content and new videos that I release on a weekly basis. So you don't want to miss anything that I'm putting out. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into this week's content. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and start what will be a series over the next 5 weeks. Okay, today being the first installation of learning to hear the voice of God. From what I hear people say a lot is, I don't know if it's God speaking to me, if it's the devil speaking, or if it's me speaking, or my own thoughts just kind of rambling on. So I need to figure out how to decipher between those voices or those feelings or those thoughts. So I want to dive into that as well during the course of this series. But today I want to talk about intimacy. Okay, the definition of intimacy literally means to see into. Okay, so you're looking beyond the physical external characteristics of a person and you're peering into what makes them tick, what makes them who they are. Okay, and not only that, but you're looking into this person as they allow you to see into them. Okay, through transparency and vulnerability. Okay, those are the two main points, or pillars, if you will, of intimacy. So as I am transparent, and as we are transparent with each other, and as we become vulnerable with each other, we begin to see into ourselves. Okay, and that is the foundation of intimacy, to see into another person. All right. So what is the point of seeing into another person? Well, the reason why intimacy is so powerful is because it elevates your knowledge of the other person, okay? And once you have two people that both desire intimacy with each other, that is when it really becomes super powerful, okay? And you begin to walk in a different level of love and a different level of enlightenment and a different level of knowledge as it relates to that person. Okay, so the whole point of intimacy is knowing. It's knowledge. All right, knowing beyond just the superficial surface type of characteristics, and that person has to become vulnerable and transparent in order for that to happen. So let's take it a step further. So not only is intimacy seeing into a person, but intimacy requires death in a way. Okay, and what do I mean by that? Death can be a scary word. So I want to kind of clarify what I mean by intimacy involving death. So if you are desiring intimacy with another person, okay, and please kind of take these concepts and apply them to your relationship with God as well, because that's basically what the thrust of this series is all about. Okay, being intimate with the Father, being intimate with God. And from this intimacy with the Father, from that intimacy will come intimacy in your other relationships as well. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later. I'm just giving you all of the snippets and the previews in this video so that you can anticipate what's going to be discussed in other episodes as well. Okay, so as it relates to the death process in regards to intimacy, we have to if intimacy is done properly, we have to die to ourselves so that we can live in another person. Okay? We have to die to ourselves so that we can live in another person. And if the other person is willing to do the same, if they are willing to die to themselves so that they can live inside of us, then that is where you have the perfection of unity that defines or that frames intimacy. Okay, so let me go a little bit deeper with that. So when Jesus came, Jesus walked the earth for 33 years, and he died, was crucified, buried, and was raised again by the Spirit of God so that he could live inside of each of us and not be limited by his physical bodily form. Jesus was saying, I'm going to have to peace out to y'all for a minute. All right. But the reason why I am dying to this form is so that I can live inside of each of you simultaneously in another form. Okay. So my friends, this is the picture of intimacy. Okay. And Jesus requires, if we are to really experience true intimacy with him, he requires that we die to ourselves, our fleshly and carnal desires, so that we can live inside of him in another form. Okay? So Jesus promises that when we die to ourselves, okay, the glory that shall be revealed in us, okay, that's what he meant when he said, so when we choose to die, the death that intimacy requires, okay, that death is the seed of a new life or a new resurrection, okay, in him. Intimacy is the foundation for learning the voice of God, okay? The voice of God is actually the reward of intimacy, okay? What do I mean by that? So just kind of think about your relationships here with other people, okay? So think about your family, for instance. All right. So me personally, I'm just going to give you an example. I am very close with my family. Especially my mom and dad. I try to talk to them every day, at least every other day. Okay. Now, that level of relationship, okay, for me, it is a very intimate relationship. I talk to them every day, and as a result of me interacting with them every day, if I were to call home, for instance, and someone other than my mother or my father answered the phone, I could tell pretty quickly that I wasn't talking to my mom or my dad, okay? And the reason why I could tell is because I know their voices. And the reason why I know their voices is because I talk to them and I interact with them on a regular basis. Okay, it's not once a year, it's not once a month, it's not whenever I'm in trouble or whenever I'm hurting or just need to talk to someone. I talk to them pretty much every day. And as a result of that relationship and that interaction consistently, I know their voice. Okay, so that's what Jesus meant when he said in John chapter 10, my sheep hear my voice, and a stranger they will not follow. My sheep, the people who belong to me in my fold, the people that I shepherd, hear my voice. Okay? So there's a really cool analogy that I came across as it relates to sheep and shepherd. So, in the community of the shepherd and livestock, the shepherds will often keep their sheep, and when they have to go away or when they have to kind of, be away from the sheep for any length of time, they often take the sheep to these things called community sheepfolds. So they bring them to these areas and these open fields where their other shepherds' flocks, they're with their flocks. So these flocks are mixed, okay? So what happens is, and I thought this was super cool, what happens is when that shepherd comes back from their journey and they come to retrieve their sheep, okay? It could be, a flock of sheep, however many sheep that they left. Now keep in mind, their sheep are there with other shepherd sheep as well. So there is a call or a certain sound that that particular shepherd makes, and that flock of sheep know that sound or that voice from their shepherd, and only his sheep actually come to him. So I think that is super amazing, because we see this analogy in John chapter 10 when Jesus says, my sheep hear my voice, and a stranger they will not follow. Because there is a signature sound that that shepherd makes to call his sheep unto himself. Okay, he doesn't need to go and separate each individual sheep from the other shepherd's flock. He has a call because he is in relationship with the sheep. He spends time each day with the sheep, walking them, leading them to water, feeding them, caring for them, and they begin to hear and know his voice. And if there are other sheep around, it doesn't matter, because when that shepherd calls out in that specific signature tone and voice to the sheep know and hear and know his voice, and they come to him. All right, so it's amazing to me that people want to know or hear the voice of God, but don't ever want to spend time in prayer, communion, fasting, any of that stuff to really build and knit their hearts to the Lord, because hearing the voice of God is simply the byproduct of intimacy with him. What are the components of intimacy? All right, intimacy has three main components that I want to give you in relation to this series that I'm going to be sharing with you. So the first component, and of course, you guys know I love acronyms. So I want you to remember the three components of intimacy as found in the word see, S-E-E. Okay, as if you're seeing. Okay, so the three components of intimacy: C. S is for secrecy. Okay, the first E is for emotion, and the second E is for enlightenment. Okay, now let me explain what these components mean. All right, so in Matthew chapter 6, Jesus is instructing his disciples on prayer. Okay, so he's teaching them how to pray. So he tells them something very interesting to me, which I find fascinating. He tells them, when you pray, all right, don't be like the Pharisees going out in public and praying out loud, okay, and saying the same things over and over again. I'm just kind of paraphrasing that. He basically says vain repetition, all right? So saying the same things over and over again, being loud in public, calling it prayer. He said, when you pray, don't model that behavior. Rather, do the opposite. When you pray, go into your closet, close the door behind you, and then pray to your Father. And it's the principle here that I do want you to catch. All right, the principle of secrecy. All right, the first component of intimacy is secrecy. Jesus says, your Father who sees in secret shall reward you openly. Man, that is so poetic. I don't know if you've ever been around a couple that is just like in love with each other, head over heels, and they just, you can see it. It's visible, kind of makes you sick a little bit. But you have to admire the relationship and the level of intimacy that they have. And, one of the things that may stand out is they understand things about each other that no one else does. All right. They have these little inside jokes and these little inside remarks, and they kind of look at each other if something is said, or if they say something, one of them may say something out loud and look at the other one, and they kind of lock eyes and they giggle and they laugh or whatever. And okay, that's an inside thing. I'm definitely not in the know in that one. Because the level of intimacy is almost kind of secretive. They share a common bond that they don't have with anyone else. It's just strictly between the two, okay? So that's what I mean by secrecy. I don't mean keeping secrets from each other, okay? That's manipulation. That's not what I mean. I mean, sharing in a common knowledge that is so intimate that no one else is in that sphere of knowledge. The first E, okay, is emotion. Intimacy involves emotion. There is an intense connection, okay? There is a desire. You begin to crave the presence of that person. You begin to crave talking to them. You begin to crave being around them. So that's the reason why intimacy is so important with the Father, because he actually creates this craving for his presence. The more time we spend with him, we begin to long to be in his presence, okay? So that is the emotional piece of it. He uses our emotions to knit our hearts together with his, all right? So he brings us into that place of emotional desire and longing for him, okay? David said, Lord, my flesh longs for you, okay? My flesh literally is crying out for you, okay? I long for you as a deer pants after the water brooks, okay? Those are strong emotional analogies, all right? I need you. I long for you. This intense craving for you. I need to be satisfied, and I'm only satisfied in your presence, all right? So the last E, or the second E, is enlightenment. So we have secrecy, we have emotions, and we have enlightenment. Enlightenment is basically knowing. It is, we've kind of touched on this, it is an intense knowledge, okay, that we have, that comes only by spending time with the person, enjoying this person's presence. You become enlightened about this person, what they like, what they've gone through, some of the things they desire, their goals. You know, those are the types of things that, you know, you learn about the more time you spend with the person. And it's the same way with the Father. The Father has goals. He has desires for you, you know, and you can tell the more time you spend with God, you can tell the difference very easily between his voice and the devil's voice. Okay, if the devil is speaking to you so loudly that it's hard for you to hear God's voice, then we definitely have a bigger problem. We have a bigger problem here. So that's one of the things that I definitely admonish you to really seek God about, okay? To silence the voice of the enemy and to heighten his voice in your life, all right? So there's an intense knowledge or enlightenment that comes, all right? Whenever you read in the Bible of a husband and a wife coming together in marriage, right, after they are married, the Bible often says that he knew her, okay? Or the husband knew his wife. Okay, and a lot of times that does have a component of physical intimacy, all right, and just kind of consummating the marriage. But basically it's saying that they were intimate, okay? They shared common knowledge about each other that no one else was privy to, okay? So that's what it means to know, to be intimate with, to know, or to see into, okay? Last but not least, I want to ask you a couple of questions to end this video. So the first question is, why do you want to hear from God? Why do you want to know God's voice? What is your motive? What is your motive for hearing God? Okay, so think about that. Why do I really want to hear the voice of God? Okay. The second question is, are you really up for the challenge of really learning to hear the voice of God? Because it is not easy. Okay, let me say that. All right, I don't want to give you rainbows and unicorns and cotton candy and all that stuff. I want to be real with you. Learning to hear the voice of God is a lot of trial and error. Okay, it's a lot of trial and error. So it's going to take a commitment on a daily basis. You have to be willing to commit to learning the voice of God, learning to hear. And it's going to be risky, okay? Many times God's voice and his direction and what he tells you to do places you out there in a very risky position because it breaks you out of your comfort zone, okay? It forces you to do things that you may not have ever really done before or may not have ever been comfortable doing before, okay? You may have to go up and talk to a person, okay, that you don't know. You may have to, do something in an environment that you're not fully comfortable in, All right. So all of those things are very strong possibilities when God begins to talk to you. All right. So are you up for the challenge? Are you willing to obey his voice when you hear him, when you start to hear him? Okay. Because that's what's going to create the momentum and the inertia that you need to become even stronger in your relationship and your intimacy with God. All right. So jot those 2 questions down. Think about those over the next week or so. And meet me back here next week when I'm going to really get into the first key of hearing the voice of God, and that is prayer. All right. So join me next week when we dive into my favorite topic, and that is spending time with God. All right. So speaking of spending time with God, you guys, I am about to release my first book. Of course, as some of you already know, The Spear Paradigm is about to be hot off the presses. So I want you to keep your ears and eyes open for the announcement as it relates to when it's going to be available on all of the online platforms, when it will be available on my website, www.brianlevans.com, which I will put in the comments, in the description rather, underneath this video, where you can go to my website and check out more information about the Spear Paradigm. All right. So listen, I love you guys. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please feel free to comment. And remember, be bold, be yourself, and be unleashed. Love you guys.